Today we're going to make nether stars completely automatically with the create mod. So the first thing we need are wither skeleton skulls. So as you can see here, I've constructed a little wither skeleton farm, which is basically just an iron golem in the middle of a nether fortress. So now here's the thing, any normal automatic skeleton killing mechanism wouldn't work for our purposes, because normally if you kill a wither skeleton by anything that's not a player, it will not drop a wither skeleton skull. So luckily we have deployers, which can simulate pretty much any action a player could normally take. What I've done here is I've just set up this deployer to punch. Wither skeletons fall in here, they get punched, and because we're using a deployer as opposed to like a piston or some other killing mechanism, it will drop a wither skeleton skull. So now we need to take these skulls and build a wither out of them. First, I'm going to send them to the end. I'll explain why later. So you can see here I've shoved them through a nether portal, and I'm also using the immersive portals mod, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier, but I am. So what I've done here is I've just shoved it through a nether portal, and then immediately shoved it through an end portal. Obviously if you're building this in survival, it's going to be a bit more difficult than that. Yeah, this is just for convenience sake. Where they get caught by these belts, and shoved through this chute here down to the end portal. I'll explain all this stuff in a second. So now that we have the wither skeleton skulls, we need soul sand. So over here I have a tiny little cobblestone generator with a drill on top, and then 2 pairs of crushing wheels to crush the cobblestone into sand. So then the sand gets dropped down into this bulk haunter, and the haunter converts the sand into soul sand. So then down here below the end portal I have the soul sand and the wither skeleton skulls getting fed into these deployers down here, which are then placing the soul sand and the skulls down here below the portal. So now I didn't technically have to use the end portal for this. I could have used the nether roof, but in order for this to work I needed a cobblestone generator, and you can't really do that in the nether because the water just dries up immediately. So now you'll notice this little mechanism over here is drilling out wither skeleton skulls, and you're probably wondering why that is. So here's the thing, for a wither to be made, you have to place down the skulls after you place down the soul sand, which wouldn't be that big of an issue if the wither didn't constantly destroy all the soul sand underneath it. So now I previously had a similar problem with my iron golem maker, but in the iron golem maker I used a little redstone circuit to figure out when the iron blocks were placed down. The problem is I can't really do that here because any blocks I get close to the soul sand are going to get instantly destroyed by the wither. So instead what I've done here is I've just put a drill here, wither just died, I've just put a drill here to constantly pick up and replace the wither skeleton skull. So that way, even if the soul sand gets destroyed somehow, the last block that gets placed down will be a wither skeleton skull, and that'll fix the issue of it placing it in order. So now to the matter of actually killing the wither. So here's the thing. So the wither heals itself, which means using your bare fists against the wither is not really an option, because that's just not strong enough to kill the wither. So what I've done over here is I have a deployer with an iron sword that it keeps stabbing the wither when there's a wither there. And when it kills the wither, the nether star will usually be put in this chest over here. Every now and then the wither dies from, well, blowing itself up repeatedly inside of the bedrock there. And so you'll notice every now and then one of the nether stars will just drop off to the side, but it usually ends up in the chest. So now onto the issue of how do we get iron swords. So you can see the deployers will still use the durability of the tools that they're using. So we need to replace the iron swords every now and then because this will eventually break. So up here I have a cobblestone generator that's feeding into a crusher, crushing it into gravel. The gravel is then getting washed to get iron nuggets. The iron nuggets are then getting pressed into iron ingots, and that's getting fed into this mechanical crafter. Now for the sticks, I have a little automatic tree farm right here. It's just a tree that you get the point, it gets replanted and then it gets cut down. And then any sticks that it gets from cutting down the tree just end up here, and everything else just gets burned in lava because I don't need it. Oh, except the saplings. The saplings get fed back around and replanted. So yeah, we got iron, we got sticks, we got it crafting in the swords, and yeah. Now if you're familiar with the create mod, you're probably looking at this and thinking, wow, that is some of the most inefficient machinery I've seen in my entire life. And you'd be correct. But here's the thing, is that it doesn't actually matter, because the entire thing holding up this entire operation is just the wither skeleton skulls. That's basically the bottleneck in the whole thing, because even if you get like a super efficient wither skeleton skull farm, there's still only a 2.5% chance of actually getting a skull, and you need 3 of them per wither. So that's That's the big issue. I mean, if you think about it, this entire thing is kind of useless anyway, because I mean, like, how many beacons do you actually need? Oh, also, if you're a returning viewer from some of my previous videos, I will be uploading more often, soon enough. So anyway, that's about it. Yeet!